Hello and welcome to Verbal to Visual. I am your host, Doug Neill, and today I wanted to walk through a decision-making tree that I created to help me solidify my sketchnoting process. I created this tree using the app Concepts. I'm recording this using Zoom, and this type of flowchart that I'm about to show you might be something that you'd like to create for yourself as a way to represent your approach to sketchnoting and make some decisions once that you can then follow each time you jump into a sketchnoting session. So my decision-making tree here has three components to it. One is about the source material, the other is related to sketching individual ideas, and the third has to do with a post-Sketchnote workflow, what I want to do at the end of each sketchnoting session. So let's look at each of those in order. First, the source material here. And really, I just identified two different types of media that I tend to sketchnote, one being books, the other being podcast episodes. I think similar to the book category might be articles, maybe things that I read online or within a magazine. When I read a book, I like to go through this process here, starting by underlining and taking some notes in the margins. Then once I've read the whole book, I'll do some rough sketchnoted one-page chapter summaries. Lately, I've been experimenting with doing chapter by chapter sketch notes. So I'll kind of cycle through these first two steps for each chapter before I move on to the next. So far, though, it's looking like I enjoy the process more where I do this first step for the entire book and then go on to these next ones here. So after those chapter sketch notes, I'll go back and highlight the ideas I want to do something more with. And then that might be the point when I turn to digital tools and sketchnote those ideas digitally and maybe decide how I might like to share a few of them with others. Maybe in a video, maybe just with individual images. So that's kind of my overall process for sketchnoting a book. With a podcast, there are a few different variants that I sometimes go down. If I'm taking notes in the office, I might go with this approach where I use my iPad and this same app here, Concepts, and I do some live sketch notes with a mind map approach. That's what I did when taking notes on Roxane Gay's interview with Chase Jarvis. I recorded that whole process in real time in case you'd like to see what iPad sketch notes look like, not sped up. But then I also enjoy listening to podcasts on the go while out on a walk. And if that's the approach that I want to go with, I listen and take notes on my phone using Evernote to keep just some real quick bullet point notes. I also shared a video on that process that I enjoy because it kind of splits up the filtering and then the visualizing process. I do that filtering while I'm out on the walk, deciding what sets of ideas I might want to capture. And then depending on how I want to follow up with those ideas, listening to my mood and paying attention to the specific content. Maybe I'll do a series of sketch notes in my small moleskin, or maybe I might want to do a larger page visual summary that the iPad might work well for. So what this here kind of represents then is the kind of zoomed out view of my process, depending on the type of thing that I'm sketchnoting. This might be a good first stage for you to tackle if you'd like to create your own diagram like this. But then the next question that comes up is, how do you actually visualize each of the individual ideas that you want to take notes on? And that's where this next section comes in. Like, what do I do with each new idea? And I've identified kind of three questions that I need to answer. What's the visual form of the idea? What's the phrase? So what's the text that I do want to include somewhere within the sketch note? And where should it go on the page? And within this diagram that I've created, I kind of spend all my time in the what's the visual form section, because the phrase is something that I kind of filter and determine in the moment. And then where it goes on the page is determined by the specific process that I'm using. With a mind map, it's whatever next branch makes the most sense based on what's already there on the page. Or if it's taking sketch notes in a small moleskin notebook, after taking bullet point notes while out on a walk, I already will have kind of grouped the ideas onto different pages, so that's pretty straightforward as well. But for the visual form, I kind of identified a handful of different categories that I'll walk through here. If it's a set of ideas that I'm working with, then some sort of a list makes sense. I've kind of identified here, even if I have less time to capture that list, I might just use kind of essentially like a bullet point list, but instead of bullets, maybe I'll just use stars for each point. Or if I have a little bit more time, I might come up with custom icons for each of the individual ideas that make up that list. And as I'm thinking about what those icons might be, if I already know what I want to draw, then I kind of, pull from my current visual vocabulary. That tends to be what I cycle through first. There are probably maybe 100 or 200 icons that I have drawn enough that come to mind quickly and I know I can jot down without any other reference. But if the idea is something that maybe I haven't worked with before and I want to do some searching for a visual that I haven't used within my notes before, that's when I might seek out a tool like the Noun Project or a Google image search to help me identify, okay, what's the visual that I want to include with that specific idea? And then a new step that I've added that I haven't yet implemented, but I think I might like to do in the future is after I've completed the sketch note, ask myself, how likely am I to want that visual within my practiced visual vocabulary? Is that icon, that sketch, likely to come in handy in the future? If so, then I'll add it to my visual vocabulary processing queue. That's kind of this folder that I'm imagining where I can place the new icons that I'm learning. And then maybe once a month, I go through those and practice them to just reinforce them, get them into my muscle memory so that I can use them in the future. But if I'm not likely to use that specific visual again, if it's maybe too niche, I won't really worry about practicing it. So that's how you might add new visual vocabulary into your skill set. If it's not a set of ideas, but a single idea, again, I kind of did this less time versus more time breakdown, depending on how much time I have available or how much time I want to use. If there's less time, I'll just go with an icon next to that text that I've decided to include. And again, that similar breakdown occurs based on the type of visual I'd like to draw and whether I already know how to draw it. But if it's a single idea and I'd like to spend more time on it, then I might go with a container approach, where I'm still drawing a visual, but rather than just having kind of the simple approach of an icon next to text, it can be fun to draw the image large enough so the text lives within inside it. That's a fun way to approach the merging of the visual and verbal elements to your sketch notes. So those are my options for capturing a single idea. If I'm listening to or read about a story, then I might go with the scene. And here I think about, okay, what's the setting of this scene? What's like the photograph that I can picture that helps to serve as an anchor to the ideas that were just shared? So I think about setting, I think about characters, who is in it, and then kind of what's going on and what are the things worth mentioning in the text to help me remember enough details of the story so that the kind of core ideas underlying it actually stick with me. If some sort of a relationship is being described, then I go with some sort of a diagram. And I've started to identify the specific types of diagrams that I might want to use. It could be something like a Venn diagram or a side-by-side comparison chart. Maybe it's some sort of a balance leaning equally or one way or the other. And I kind of hope to continue adding to this bank of diagrams, similar to how I'm building a visual vocabulary over time. I think you can also build up a set of diagrams that you're comfortable using so that you can kind of quickly pull those in whenever they're relevant to the ideas you're capturing. And then finally, if I just really like the phrase that was said or that was written, I might like to capture that fully as a quote. And for those, I'll kind of lean more on hand lettering, capturing that whole phrase, the full text, but maybe choosing a few words to make bigger or bolder or more stylish so that the full phrase is there, but there's still a few words that stand out. So I feel pretty good about this as kind of the starting point to help me think through anytime a particular idea has passed through my filter. So I know it's an idea that I want to capture on the page. These limited number of options help me think through the specific way I'd like to represent it. And what I might continue to do over time, similarly to kind of how this branched further down to get to more of the specifics. I might try to do something similar with scenes to kind of more specifically outline like setting and characters and caption, something like that. Continue adding to the diagrams that I'm comfortable with, and maybe even outlining a more specific process when I want to do some sort of hand lettering for a quote. Which is all to say there is room for this decision-making flowchart to continue growing whenever it feels useful to add more details to it. And as I was first creating this decision-making flowchart, I kind of had it on hand while I was doing some sketchnoting of a book or a podcast. So this could be the type of thing that you create over time, maybe like after each sketchnoting session. So you maybe reference your flowchart, jump into a sketchnoting session, and then as you're working with those ideas in your specific setting and the specific type of media you're working with, you might recognize other helpful pieces that you'd like to add to your flowchart. And that type of back and forth of creating this flowchart and then going and doing some sketchnoting and then adding to the flowchart, that back and forth could be a good way to approach the creation of this type of personalized resource. And then to finish things off, we've got this section about post-Sketchnote workflow. What do you do after you've completed the thing? Here I'm encouraging myself to check that I've included the source of the material that I'm sketchnoting within the sketchnote itself, my own signature of some sort, and maybe linking to my website, verbaltovisual.com. Once I make sure that those things are included within the sketchnote itself, then I might go on to do a bit of written reflection about the ideas that I just captured and maybe what I want to do with those ideas next. I really enjoy that combo because when you're sketchnoting, the focus is often just on the ideas themselves, capturing them in as accurate and visually engaging a way as possible. Once you've done that, it's nice to kind of take a step back and do this thinking and reflecting to decide how you'd like to apply those ideas to your life. That's what this stage is all about. And since I'm sharing my sketch notes and helping others develop their sketchnoting skills, the next step might be to create a video to share some of the highlights, both the ideas that I've captured, but also the process by which I've captured those ideas. So do that type of documenting and sharing in video format so that I can post a video like this one to YouTube. And then what I also do with those videos is create a blog post that lives on Verbal to Visual that has this video at the top, and then some of those written reflections, potentially links to sources and related material. And it's that blog post that I share to places like Twitter and Facebook, and post some images to Instagram. And at that point, I feel pretty good about the work that I've done to capture and process and internalize the ideas that I was reading or listening to. And then I've also shared those ideas in a way that might be helpful to others. And again, maybe it's the specific content of the sketchnote that's helpful, or something about my process of sketchnoting that's helpful to folks like you. As a whole, then, this 3-section flowchart diagram here kind of represents the entirety of my sketchnoting process. It's a helpful reference for me whenever I'm starting a new sketchnote. It's also the type of resource that I will continue adding to and refining over time. And if this type of thing sounds useful to you for your sketchnoting, no matter the specific area in which you're working, whether you're taking notes just for yourself, maybe you're sharing them with colleagues, maybe you're also documenting and sharing things in a blog format or in video, having some sort of a reference like this to map out your process could be really helpful. So I encourage you to try something like this out and let me know how it goes. And if you're comfortable sharing, maybe post it to Twitter or Instagram or Facebook and tag me so that I can take a look. If you're newer to the world of visual note taking and want some helpful skill building activities to get you started, then check out the free guide that I've created called Getting Started with Sketchnoting. I've linked to that guide down below this video. And also let me know if you enjoyed this format. This has kind of been a fun way to walk through a specific thing that I've created. And if you've enjoyed it, I might continue weaving videos like these into what I share on YouTube, in addition to the pen and paper top-down setup that I also enjoy and will never abandon. So let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching this one, and good luck creating your own decision-making tree. Thanks again, and see you in the next one. Till then.